The night settled softly over the old town as if the air itself wished to forget what the walls had once seen. The narrow streets breathed a silence that belonged to things hidden long ago, and in the far corner of that forgotten lane stood a house with a whisper in its bricks. The wind moved through the cracks as though speaking a language of dust and memory. The paint had faded to a dull gray, the windows clouded with time, and no one had entered that place for years. Yet the house waited for something, perhaps for someone to listen to its quiet confession once more. Within its heart, behind a layer of stone, there slept a secret too heavy for words and too dark for light to reach. There was a girl who came walking one afternoon. Her name was Leora, her steps gentle, her eyes filled with questions. She had just moved to the town after her father passed away, and she had been told to avoid the house on the corner. But curiosity is a strange thing. It grows in the silence, it feeds on warnings, and it whispers. What if Leora had always loved forgotten things? She believed every ruin carried a story that refused to die. So one day, as the sky dimmed and the smell of rain crept over the roofs, she walked to the gate. Her fingers brushed the iron and it groaned like something waking from a long sleep. She stepped in. The garden was overgrown, weeds curling around broken statues. The air was thick with stillness and the echo of something unfinished. She touched the wall and felt it breathe faintly under her hand, as though something alive waited inside. She whispered hello, but only her voice came back, softer, slower and older. The door was half open. It swung gently as she pushed it, revealing a hallway lined with portraits whose faces were lost in shadow. She felt a shiver, not of fear but of strange belonging, like she had returned to a place she never knew. She knew she should turn back, but she did not. She followed the faint scent of roses, though there were none around. Her steps echoed against the floor, each sound a memory waking after long years. In the far room a mirror stood, cracked and covered in dust. She looked into it and saw not her reflection but the faint shimmer of another shape, someone standing just behind her. She turned, but there was no one, only the wall breathing the same quiet rhythm of something buried deep. The light from the window caught the surface of the wall, and for a second she saw an outline, faint and trembling as if a figure was trapped within stone. She reached out, but before she could touch it the air grew colder. Her heart quickened and a whisper touched her ear, so close it felt inside her mind. Leave now, it said, leave before you remember. Leora stumbled back, her breath shallow. She ran from the room, the whisper following her like a thread in the wind. She reached the garden, her hands trembling, her mind echoing with that single phrase, before you remember. The rain began to fall. She looked back at the house and saw through the mist a shadow standing at the window, watching her as if waiting for her to return. She knew she would come back. She knew the story was not finished. That night she could not sleep. She dreamed of walls whispering names she did not know, of hands pressing from beneath the plaster, of eyes opening where there should be none. And every time she woke she felt they found herself surrounded by shelves that smelled of dust and forgotten memories. She searched the old town records. The librarian, an old man with trembling fingers, watched her curiously when she asked about the house on the corner. His eyes dimmed with something between fear and sorrow. He said that house belonged to the Marlowe family long ago, the father a stonemason, the mother a painter, and their little daughter Alara. One night they vanished. No one saw them leave, no one heard a thing. Only the next morning the door was locked and the house silent. Since then no one had stayed there for long. Some said they heard voices, some said they saw faces in the walls, but no one ever stayed to find out more. The old man leaned closer and whispered, some say the walls remember and some say they do not forgive. Leora felt a chill run through her, but she thanked him and left, her thoughts heavy as rain clouds. She needed to know more. She returned to the house at dusk, the world wrapped in a faint grey mist that blurred the edges of everything. She stood at the gate again. This time the air felt heavier. She could hear the faint hum of the earth beneath her feet, as if something waited beneath. She stepped inside, each step slower than the last. The silence welcomed her in that strange way only haunted places do. The hall looked different this time. The portraits seemed clearer, the eyes following her wherever she moved. She reached the same room where she had seen the cracked mirror. It was gone, replaced by a section of wall that looked newly plastered. She touched it. The surface was colder than stone. Her heart raced. She pressed her ear against it and heard something faint, a heartbeat, slow, steady, ancient. She whispered Alara, and the heartbeat quickened. She stumbled back, fear rising, but then she saw faint marks on the wall, almost like letters carved by trembling hands. She traced them with her fingers and felt warmth pulse beneath her skin. The letters spelled help me, and before she could pull away the wall shuddered, as if exhaling for the first time in years. She backed away, her breath short. The air around her began to hum low and deep. She turned and saw the faint shape of a little girl at the end of the hallway, her hair falling falling over her face, her dress pale as moonlight. Leora froze. The girl lifted her head and smiled, a smile that was both kind and sad. "You heard me," she whispered, her voice as thin as smoke. "You heard the wall." Leora wanted to run but could not, her feet rooted by something stronger than fear. "What happened to you?" she asked. The girl tilted her head. "The wall took us. It remembers everything. It does not let go." Her voice trembled and her form flickered as if fading in and out of time. Leora reached out, her fingers brushing through the air where the girl had been, and then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of roses, the same scent from before. Leora turned back to the wall. She whispered, "I will help you," and the house seemed to sigh, the sound deep and tired, like a secret relieved to be heard for the first time in ages. That night she brought a lantern and a small chisel. She began to scrape the surface of the wall slowly, carefully, the dust falling like gray snow beneath her feet, and as she worked she felt warmth spread through the stone. She heard faint whispers, overlapping voices too soft to understand. She kept working, her arms aching, her breath shallow, until a small hollow opened within, and inside it something glimmered faintly beneath the layers of mortar, something that did not belong to the house. She reached in and her fingers brushed cold metal, a small box wrapped in faded cloth. She pulled it free, and as she unwrapped it the air shifted again, cold then warm then still. Inside the box was a locket and a folded piece of paper yellowed with time. Her hands trembled as she opened it, the words faint but still legible, "I tried to save her but the wall took her before I could." Marlowe, the name echoed in her mind. She looked back at the wall and the faint outline of a hand pressed outward from within, fingers stretching, reaching. She dropped the box and stumbled back. The lantern flickered and went out. The house fell into darkness. Only the sound of that faint heartbeat remained steady and near. She felt it inside her chest, echoing her own rhythm. She whispered, "Alara, I will come back tomorrow, I promise." And as she left, the door creaked closed behind her as if the house understood, waiting once again for the next breath of truth to be spoken. The next morning came wrapped in silver fog and trembling light. Leora woke with the sound of that heartbeat still in her ears. It pulsed through her thoughts like a soft drum calling her back. She could not resist. She packed a small bag and went to the house again. The streets were empty, the town quiet, as if the world had stepped aside to let her pass. When she reached the gate, it was already open. The wind moved through it slowly, the way one breathes before speaking a secret. She stepped inside and the air shifted around her, heavier yet warmer than before. The silence greeted her like an old friend. The floor creaked beneath her steps. The smell of dust and roses filled her lungs. She walked toward the wall where the box had been and saw that the plaster had cracked overnight, spreading like veins across its surface. Beneath the cracks the faint outline of a door was visible, a door hidden for decades. She pressed her hands against it and it moved slightly as if recognizing her touch. Behind it came the faint hum of something alive. She took a deep breath and pushed it open. The room beyond was small, dark and filled with the scent of old earth and something faintly sweet. On the floor lay scattered drawings of a little girl drawn with chalk and faded colors. The walls here were smooth, untouched by time except for one spot where faint marks were carved. Again words, but older, rougher, carved by a desperate hand. The same name, Alara, and beneath it a single phrase, "The wall remembers me." She felt tears rise in her eyes as she realized what had happened. The stonemason had built the house around his grief, his daughter trapped within the wall by accident or something far worse. The guilt had consumed him and the walls had taken his sorrow until they began to breathe with it. She knelt and whispered, "Alara, can you hear me?" And the air grew warm. The faint glow filled the room and from the light a small figure appeared again, her eyes wide and soft, her voice gentle. "I was waiting," she said, her tone not of pain but of peace. Leora asked, "Do you want to be free?" The girl nodded slowly. The walls began to tremble, dust falling like slow rain. Leora felt fear but she did not stop. She touched the wall again and whispered, "Then go home." The air filled with light, the glow spreading through every crack, every shadow, until the whole house seemed to breathe one final time, and then silence, complete stillness. The warmth faded, leaving only quiet. The figure of the girl smiled once more. "Thank you," she said, and then she was gone. Only the scent of roses remained. The light faded and the room stood still again. The cracks had sealed themselves smooth as if the wall had exhaled its last memory. Leora stood in the silence for a long time, the weight of centuries lifting like dust in sunlight. She left the house, the door closing softly behind her. When she stepped into the street, the mist had cleared, the town looked brighter, the air lighter. She turned once more to the house, now calm and quiet, and whispered, "Rest." The house said nothing, but she felt its gratitude in the still air. She walked away slowly, the heartbeat no longer echoed in her chest, only a calm, steady rhythm of her own. Days later she returned to the library. She opened the records again and added a single line beneath the name Marlowe. "The secret is a piece." The old librarian looked at her and smiled faintly, as if he knew without words what she had done that night. As she lay in bed, the moonlight drifted across her face and she thought she heard a faint sound like laughter carried on the wind, soft and distant. She smiled and let the quiet take her, knowing that some secrets once buried are not meant to haunt but to be heard one last time before they fade into the walls of memory forever.